Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Poema podcast. I am James Prescott, your host. Welcome back to the show. Really great to have you all here with us again. And today, a new guest. I always love having new guests on. It's always great to talk to new people and hear new stories. So, welcome to the show, Andrea De Ward.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Another one who I encountered on Twitter. A
Yes.
lot of my guests I seem to encounter on Twitter. That's probably gonna have to change soon because I don't think I'll be on Twitter much longer. I don't think many of us will be. So it'll probably be on Threads or wherever people are now. But yeah, no, it's really great to have you here. We're gonna hear your story today, and we're gonna talk a bit about grief, as we often do.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us a bit about yourself and like your background.
Okay. I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I grew up in the Christian Reformed Church, which is kind of a conservative denomination within the Reformed tradition. Uh, 2 years after college, well, 1 year after college, my husband and I got married. And then the next year, we went to seminary together. And we became ordained in the Reformed Church in America in 2003. So I've been a pastor for 20 years and a few months. And in 2020, I started to pivot towards chaplaincy instead of church work. And so now I'm I'm a chaplain at an assisted care, like a senior living community. So I work with a memory care unit as well as assisted living residents.
Wow, how long have you been doing that? A couple of years.
I did to be a chaplain, you have to take a training called clinical pastoral education, so CPE for short. So I did my first unit of CPE in 2020 to 2021. It was kind of an extended 6-month program. And that kind of opens the door then for you to become a chaplain. To be like a board certified chaplain, you have to have 4 units. So I only have 1 unit. But I do have a lot of experience because of all my church work, of course, have walked alongside of a lot of families through diagnosis, through death, grief, sometimes sudden tragedies. But now I'm kind of pivoting towards that pastoral care work within the chaplaincy realm. So I'm actually only in my new job for about a month so far.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's brand new.
Oh, did you have to do any kind of like, I don't want to say work experience. That's I mean, like we've just been through a really difficult period
Yeah.
in terms of what's happening in those spaces, with the height of the pandemic,
Yes. Yeah.
and COVID, and I know that in this country that care homes were hit a lot, and in America that was true as well.
Yeah.
But I
When
mean, even in your other roles, like I mean, you must have been around a lot of death and grief and
Yeah.
having to deal with that on a regular basis in the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, when we were first started as co-pastors at a church in 2003, we had a wide range of ages within our church, and we were there for about 8 years. And so we saw the range from suicide, like a 6-month-old child dying, to older beloved members of the congregation who'd been a pillar of the community for decades, diagnosis with cancer and pass away, or car accidents. So there certainly, in the many years of pastoral ministry, have walked alongside a lot of people with that in congregations, but then also within our own families. My dad died from cancer in 2011.
Oh, I'm so
And then
sorry.
more recently, when I started my chaplaincy training, I actually was doing it in a mental health facility, and I was working on an older adult unit. So I did work with older adults, and yeah, we had to do the mask and the shield and have a lot of protocols and all of that. So, but just this week, we had 3 people die at the assisted care facility. And so I got a chance to pray with 2 of the people and their families on Monday. And that was just a really holy experience to just sit. Both of them that I prayed with were no longer really responding. They weren't really talking or eating or drinking anymore, but that sense that they can still hear you and feel your presence and feel your love. And so that felt like a real honor to pray with them. And then I met with one of the families again on Wednesday, and they asked me to do the graveside service. I'm going to do that on Monday.
Oh, wow. Wow. I can't even imagine what that's like. Um, to have to deal with that on a regular basis, and yeah, in that kind of role which requires a lot of empathy and a lot of sensitivity, and it's a heavy weight to carry.
It is,
I
yeah.
mean, that's why I don't envy pastors really, because that side of the job is, it's you get those sacred moments like you talked about,
Yeah,
but there's a weight as well, isn't there, that you have to
yeah,
carry. How do you process your I mean, it must be, even though yours it's not somebody that maybe you're not losing somebody, but it's still an effect on you,
yeah.
whether that's, whether it's
Definitely when we were pastors of a church, the longer we were there, the more life we had lived with people,
mm,
through, many ups and downs and many meals together and planning teams and all kinds of activities. So I definitely found that the longer we were at that, first church for 8 years, I loved those people too. And so I myself felt like I was grieving. Um, but it also felt such an honor and privilege to be able to speak from a place where I did know and love them, allowed me to speak like at funerals or just in like a pastoral care capacity. Like that really meant a lot to families. They could see that, we're tearing up sometimes too, and they can see that we loved their mom or their sister or whatever it may be. Um,
mm,
it's an honor. It's a privilege.
yeah, yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Uh,
But you asked how I
it's
deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, because I mean, if it's something that it's almost like something you're dealing with almost on a day-to-day basis, or at least on a regular basis.
Yeah,
It's not like most people when they go experience grief, it's like, you lose your parents, and
right.
you lose, maybe somebody else, but it's like it's quite spaced out, even though it's still
Right.
awful. And I know that from personal experience, having
Yeah.
lost one of my parents. But it's like when you're dealing with it all, like, on a regular basis,
Mhm.
it must be. I guess you need to have some kind of ritual or process to,
Mhm.
to deal with those emotions and
Yeah. I
everything that
think
you're carrying.
yeah, I think a lot of times, um, I would be able to, like, hold it together and feel like a calming presence for other people, like a yeah, just bring a sense of peace and calm to the situation, but then it would be afterwards that my body was, like, holding that and holding it in, and then after leaving the room or being done with the funeral service, then it would really hit me, and then I would just cry, and you're almost shaky because you've been carrying other people's grief but also your own grief and kind of holding that in. And so then, I mean, sometimes it was like right afterwards, I leave, I go sit in the office for a minute, and I'm just weeping because you've been holding that tension, sometimes for days or weeks. um, I definitely think the hardest one was, the 6-month-old baby, though.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
by far the hardest one. Um, right as we were about to walk into the funeral service, because sometimes the pastors will walk in after everyone's seated, and there was another woman who was going to be doing the service with me, and I said to her right before we were supposed to begin, I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, because I had known this young woman and her children, and we had been walking alongside her since her baby had heart issues, for the 6 months of his life. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, because I was just feeling like I'm about to lose it myself. And she just grabbed my hand and she said, we're going to do it together. We're going to get through it together. And that was just kind of the calm that I needed from her in that moment. Another pastoral figure, to remind me, like, okay, you're not alone in this. You're not carrying this alone. We'll do it together. And I think that was definitely the hardest one, because I had, young kids young kids at that time too. And yeah, and it's just not the way it's supposed to be. You do expect
No.
that your parents and grandparents will eventually pass away, but the loss of a child is,
Oh,
I think, so absolutely devastating.
I can't even imagine what that must be like. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely understand that being so difficult
Yeah.
because, like you say, when people get older, you kind of almost kind of half expecting it,
Mhm.
to a certain extent, especially if they've been ill for a while,
Right. Yeah.
and they've had a good life and they've had a long life and they've
Right.
lived and they've done well. I guess they've had,
Yeah.
um, and but when it's a 6 month old baby, I mean, it's
Mhm.
just I can't. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are the ones where you get like, I guess, where there's questions of like, how could you allow this to happen? You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
because yeah, I can get someone older dying. That's part of life, but
Mhm.
why let the baby die?
Right.
It's, yeah.
Mhm.
um. So definitely, yeah. I mean, it must be. I know when my mother died, I tried to be strong for everybody and look after everybody, and
Right.
what I ended up doing was burying my grief and not dealing with it,
Right.
and it manifested a lot of anger, and I had problems for a while. When you're trying to be a pastor in that circumstance, how how do you navigate that? Because you're obviously trying to allow the people who've lost their loved one to grieve,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you've got to somehow keep it together, like you say. Um,
Yeah.
but it's so easy to just allow that to just like sink in and just become hardened to it, and let
Mm.
the kind of the pain, the grief, just not get processed and just be strong.
Yeah.
How do you manage to kind of navigate that?
Well, I I don't hide my emotions well. I actually don't stuff them very well. So I let it be okay. If I tear up, if I choke up for a minute, that's okay. And I think that the family recognizes and they see, either because you cared about their loved one as well, and that means a lot to them that you also are grieving that, or just that. So for instance, this family that I just met this week whose mother died, I did get choked up when I was talking to them on Wednesday. um, I didn't fall apart or anything, but I think it's because when I see them tear up, when I see them choke up, like, I can relate to that because I did lose my dad. And so when that happened for me, I didn't I did not have a deep, true sense of grief until my own dad died. And then it felt a whole new level. And I had walked alongside a lot of people already. I did grieve myself with them. I felt tremendous empathy and compassion. But until I lost my own dad, like, that was something I just was not prepared for. The level of, like, gut wrenching. I mean, it's hard to even put into words, like, that
Mm,
guttural pain and loss and just sense of, like, something ripped away that's so integral to your life. And it was really hard and painful, but I also see how that has been used to then make me more empathetic. And I've always kind of been a very compassionate, like, feel everyone else's feelings all the time anyways, but it gave me a new level of understanding. And I think I was 36 when my dad died. And it was, I mean, just such a strange experience that within the next 2 to 3 years, I had like 4 or 5 different women friends around my age who also lost their dads. And, that. 36, that feels pretty young to lose. My dad was 57 when he died, and that felt way too young for me,
Yeah.
Um, but that like gave me this like immediate connection to my different friends who, um, within the months and couple years following when they lost their dad, I was like, my heart was broken for them in a way that I couldn't have understood it previously.
Mm, that sounds familiar. My mother died when I was 23.
Oh, wow.
My sister was 20, and she was 52.
Wow.
And so, it's kind of similar, and we're all very young.
Yeah, very.
Um, and yeah, I mean, 23 is like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's 23 years ago now,
Okay.
which is quite amazing. But yeah, but you're right. It kind of but nobody I knew lost a parent for
Right.
a long time.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, most of my friends still have their parents with them. Like some of them have lost parents, and I've been able to. That's been able to be. I've been able to be supportive and
Mhm.
empathetic. And you're right. You kind of in my conversations with people who've lost someone for this
Mhm.
podcast, even what I've
Right.
noticed is there's some shared experiences that you
Definitely.
have, shared emotions, shared like habits, shared little like reactions that you only get when you've lost a parent, and that kind of it was nice to know that I wasn't alone, but it was also nice to be able to pass on what I'd learned from my experiences
Yeah.
to help other people that I cared about, and that is a privilege in itself, to
Mhm.
be able to use your grief to help others and support others and help them navigate their grief is,
It is. Yeah.
it makes you feel like it wasn't what it was. Not that it was, that experience of grief wasn't for nothing.
Right. Yeah.
That it meant something, and that it can help other people, and
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
definitely, yeah,
when I think about that aspect of it, of being able to use your experiences of pain to then like walk alongside other people, um, I mean, I am absolutely against when people say like, "Oh, God put you through that so that then you could learn this lesson or you could equip you for this." I
yeah,
absolutely reject that. But what
mm,
I do hold on to is that there's a comfort in the sense that, okay, we all are going to have pain, we all are going to suffer. And so, just as people were there for me, I can be that same thing for someone else. I wish nobody had to go through it. I wish I didn't go through that. I wish no one else would go through this pain and suffering, whatever that form that looks like. But there is a real gift, just as we in our own grief, like we need people to come alongside us. um, that is an honor and privilege to walk alongside other people in the subsequent times. I remember when Shannon Dingle's husband Lee died, and different women who had also lost their husbands at a young age, they said like, you're joining a club that no one wants to be a part of.
mm,
But yet all of those women who understood that experience, I think, like they reached out and just tried to show love and compassion. And I've seen Shannon do the same thing.
mm.
Yeah, I think
I,
that's a good way to put it. Like this is a club, whether it's a group of people who've lost their children or a spouse, or that thing of this, you're part of a club that no one wants to be a part of, but those who are in it, we're gonna take care of each other.
yeah,
I think that's
absolutely,
really
yeah. I remember what happened with Shannon as well, uh, and just yeah, it was devastating. Obviously,
good.
it was horrible, and I tried to be as supportive as I could. I didn't know her too well at the time, but I was
Yeah.
just trying to offer solidarity and just
Mhm.
space because that's what she needed, and like you say, we've kind of got each other.
Yeah,
It's kind of it's a club like you say, no one wants to be in this club,
right.
but when you meet people who are,
You're right.
you feel less alone. You
Yes.
feel safe.
Yes.
You feel like you can say whatever you feel about it. You can say whatever you think about it.
Mhm.
You're there with people. You can talk about your experiences, and they understand.
Right.
Even if it wasn't exactly the same experience for them, they understand
Yeah.
what that feels like.
Yeah.
You know, like that. Just that kind of desire to scream into the.
Right.
It's like just, and it's not even anger. It's just grief.
Yeah.
That there's so many experiences that you have when you lose a loved one that you can't explain to somebody who hasn't. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I mean, there's so many aspects of, and this, I was saying that before we started, I asked if you had listened to Rob Bell's couple of podcasts that he did on the death of his dad. It was, I think, around June or July that he posted the podcasts. And one of them was called Son of a Judge. And then the other one that was a follow up was called Still Son of a Judge, because his dad was a judge. And um, he kind of commented on the same thing, that even though he'd been a pastor for people for many years, that nothing could really prepare him. And he and his dad had dementia, and he had known for a long time that eventually, his dad was going to die. And so he had kind of done this pre-grieving work, which I think a lot of people do. If someone's dying of cancer or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, like, that there's kind of this shorter timeline, there's an end, and you do some of that grieving work ahead of time. But, he made the comment, and I would say that's totally my experience too. Until it actually happens, like, there isn't really something that can prepare you for that. It's still
yeah,
this, like, gut wrenching. And then also this aspect he talked about, like, um, you can be going through your day feeling like you're fine, and then just the most random thing can trigger that grief again, and then you're just immediately weeping.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
so, you cannot predict it. The things you think might make you cry, maybe don't. And then the other things that, you know, you think they're totally mundane. And yet that's the thing that just makes you break
yeah.
down.
You can be watching a TV show and a scene happens which reminds you of something, or a song comes on randomly out of nowhere that reminds you of something,
Yeah.
or something happens that reminds you of a memory, or you
Yeah.
know something. It can be anything, and
Yeah.
but I kind of I say I like those. I think those things are good in that I'd rather not know they're coming, because then I
Right.
can have the most natural reaction to them
Yeah.
and not try and be strong, not like try and stop myself from feeling it. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't cry for 2 weeks after my mother died, and that was because I was being strong for everybody else.
Right. Yeah.
And that's exactly, and what happened is we were preparing the funeral, and we played one of the songs we were going to play at our funeral, and that did it for me. I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting it.
Right.
And I even apologized when I cried, and my sister was like,
Uh-huh.
"Don't apologize."
Right.
Okay, I've been waiting for you to cry. You know,
Yeah.
and after that, I just cried, a lot after that.
Yeah.
It's always things that you don't expect,
Hmm.
just randomly out of nowhere.
Yeah. I was
And
watching the TV show This Is Us. Um,
oh yes,
There's
yes,
mom, dad, and three siblings, and their dad dies when they're fairly young, and
yeah.
kind of goes back in the timeline back and forth. There was an episode where they went up to their family's cabin, and they found the plans that their dad had drawn up, architectural plans for like a new, bigger cottage. And it had been years already since my dad had died in 2011 by the time I watched this. And that just, I lost it, because before my dad died, because he was in construction and he worked with his hands, he had drawn up plans to build us a new deck. That our deck was like
Oh my
shaky,
word.
wobbly. He had drawn up plans to make a new deck for us, but he never had the chance to build it. And so I saw this TV show of these kids many years later seeing these plans that their dad had built but had never had the chance to build it. And that was very unexpected for me, but wow, it was just this like huge wave of grief of just, you
Yeah.
know, and that's kind of
Well,
the beauty of art, of a
yes,
movie or
yes, it
song.
is. Yeah,
It can
yeah,
help us connect to things that sometimes we have a hard time reaching those places of grief and releasing that. And there's often
yeah,
like so many, as they say, the layers of the onion. Um,
Yeah.
It can be a really beautiful thing to have media, different forms, be able to help us
Yeah,
access
I
that
mean,
pain and
it's
release
interesting you mentioned This Is Us because I remember watching an episode of This Is Us,
that. Hmm.
where they're all traveling in the car. They're on this long journey as a family, and they put on Graceland,
Yeah.
right? Now, Graceland was my mum's favorite album,
Oh, wow.
and we used to listen to that album in the car when we went on holiday and drove
Right.
down to the south of France.
Wow.
So when that scene came, it was literally like a reenactment of my
Yeah.
childhood.
Right.
I was absolutely in bits because it was just like it was.
Right.
It was just like
Oh,
this is us, like
yeah.
literally, this is what we did, like, and yeah, because of course because the father's going to die,
Mm-hmm.
and also that I think those scenes in the past are set in the 80s, I think,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
90s, which is when we were doing that.
Right.
Well, so it was, yeah, well, that was one of the things,
Yeah.
and yeah, but yeah, that's one of the reasons I love movies. That they often,
Hmm.
so many great stories are about grief and recovery
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
movies. Like I've said this on the podcast before, most superhero stories, is certainly superhero origin stories,
Right.
are about the hero losing somebody
Right.
and responding to that by becoming a hero. Like,
Right. Right.
and like Batman is like a way of avoiding processing grief, and it's only
Hmm.
when he gives up being Batman that he gets healed, for example.
Hmm.
But like maybe that's one of the reasons I love. I mean, I've always loved superheroes, but yeah, I think there's such a good, healthy space for good art, which can tap into our our grief and allow us to process it. And it can be art of any kind. It can be poetry, it can be music, it could be movies, TV, anything.
Yeah.
And that's really really important for me anyway. And it's different for everyone. Obviously, it'll work differently for everybody,
Right.
and different things will will trigger things. But yeah, it can be really really therapeutic.
Yeah. I appreciate that. It's very
Um,
meaningful.
yeah, no, it is. It is. Yeah, um, and yeah, that story from Rob sounds very very powerful too. I
Yeah.
always recommend my listeners listen to the Robcast. It's a great podcast. Rob has been on this show a couple of times, so definitely recommend that series.
Yeah.
And yeah, but so like, mm, and how has being around the dying on
Hmm.
such a regular basis changed you?
I think it definitely gives me, excuse me, um, the sense of the fragility of life and the unpredictable nature of it, that you don't have guarantees. And so trying not to take things for granted. But I think I still have that tendency to become complacent and just kind of float along in life sometimes. And then the next time that I am confronted with, which I feel like now that I'm doing this work at the assisted living facility, it feels like an almost daily thing that I've been reflecting on for the past 4 weeks or so, because I had a little while where I wasn't doing as much. Um, actually, I actually kind of stayed away from church for about 2.5 years during the pandemic. And only a year ago did I feel like I had enough healing to go back into a church community. And so I feel like I have been away from some of that ministry oriented stuff for a while. But doing this job, every day I'm talking to people, and even just the grief that comes with transition of someone who has to let go of their house, maybe give up their driving license. They have to downsize because they're moving from a house or a condo into this, small kind of apartment in a nursing home, or this is a kind of a senior living community. But there's so much grief even before, you know, even if you yourself don't have a cancer diagnosis or whatever, so many people there have lost a spouse, or they've just gone through so much grief. And so it's definitely been at the forefront of my mind the past 4 weeks of, wow, this is where all of us are headed eventually. Some of us die young and suddenly, but most people are going to go through this aging process and this process of slowly losing certain functions. And so it's made me more aware, um, just of even disability, people who live with that their whole lives, and also those who, slowly become disabled as they become older. So I've definitely been living in this space of just feeling a lot of gratitude, but feeling very sober, I guess. The sober reality of aging and loss and transition, and just trying to appreciate what I have in front of me right now.
Yeah, that resonates. Um, I mean, my I've had a lot of things in my birth family this year which have been
Mm,
very difficult. My dad's been in hospital twice, and
mm,
I've had other members of the family who been close to death,
wow.
survived.
Yeah.
Um,
So scary
um,
though.
and my cousin passed away,
Mhm.
who was the same age as me, pretty much. So it
Wow.
was, so it's been that kind of. So I've been thinking a lot about that this year,
Hmm.
and and obviously, like being the age that I am as well, I'm thinking about that kind of second half of life
Right.
in
Yeah.
a sense, like, and what's that going to look like? And trying to learn from what I'm seeing in the generation ahead of me,
Right.
um, and like you say, trying to make the most of every moment. And um, one of the things I've said to people is that grief often uh, allows you access to a deeper joy.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you realize how precious life is,
Hmm.
and so the things that are good, you celebrate them more, and you
Yeah.
feel them more deeply because you want to make sure that you don't miss anything,
Hmm. Yeah.
because you know how because there's a more gratitude for those things, I think.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. You know, my dad died when he was 57, and my husband's parents are just a couple years older than my parents. And so, we had a 70th birthday party for his mom, and then, or for his dad first, and also for his mom. And like I'm a pretty creative, artsy person, and so I did a lot of work on putting together like kind of a memory book. We did for his dad. We did 70 things that we love about Papa, and did kind of this elaborate slideshow with pictures and facts and all of this. And it was it felt so good to like be able to do that for my father-in-law. And I also grieved that I didn't have the chance to do that for my own dad. But because I had had that loss, it also like made it really special and fun to be able to celebrate and do that for my husband's dad, my father-in-law. Um, so yeah, I totally understand that part of having lost something also helps you appreciate and find joy when you do have those moments of joy, because you know that it can be fleeting. So yeah, I think that the depth of your love and grief also can be resonated within the heights of your your joy and appreciation of things.
Yeah, it does. It does. Um, yeah, and laughing as well. Like you laugh at things that you wouldn't have laughed at before,
Oh my word.
and there's things you don't take as seriously, and you're able to laugh even when you're in the midst of a difficult time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how that happens in your. But it's something about experiencing grief and losing somebody you care about unlocks that. It's like a
Yeah.
it's like a weird logic, and it's like this. When things are going wrong, you can almost laugh
Yeah.
somehow, and it's difficult to explain to people who haven't experienced that
Yeah.
because it's something that happens. I think when you go through a bit of trauma, especially if you lose someone,
Yeah.
because you somehow have a different perspective on the whole world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it can seem to other people like a very irreverent humor. Like, how could you possibly laugh at a time like this? Or how could you think that's funny? But, in those like days and weeks after this tremendous loss, like that is part of the release. You've done plenty of your crying or your depths of despair and grieving. And then there is those things that are just a relief, that a release to be able to laugh. So for instance, my dad was cremated, and my mom and sister and I went to the funeral home, maybe a week or later or whatever, to pick up his ashes. And it was lunchtime, and there was a restaurant across the street that my dad used to like to go to. And we were driving, we are going to go to lunch, and my sister just says, "Well, what are we supposed to do with dad? Just leave him in the car?" And we just all burst out laughing, which may seem like terrible gallows humor or whatever you want to call it. But like, we had done plenty of our grieving. And so that was just the funniest moment to us of like, do we buckle the container into do we buckle it into the seat? Do we just leave dad here as we go into lunch? And for us, it was a hilarious moment that kind of gave us a relief and a release that we really needed. We needed to be able to laugh.
Yeah, I had something similar with like about a year ago. I moved house, and of course the one thing that I lost in moving was this little pot of my mum's ashes.
Oh, wow.
There's still some more left. It's not
Yeah, okay.
a disaster, but it was like I was really upset, obviously. And my cousin, who knew my mother really well and is a lot like her actually,
Mm-hmm.
he said, "But that's typical as your mum. She's always mysterious and aloof, and she's always, she was a scatterbrain. Of course, you can't find it." Like, and that made me laugh, because it
Right,
was like, she's right. She's
right.
right. It's just like her. And those sort of things help, because you kind of takes the edge off things,
Right.
and it gives you a good memory, I
Yeah,
think.
you need that. You need that sometimes. And it may not make sense to other people, but you yourself know what you've been through, and you just, yeah, it's almost like those inside jokes with the people that know you best.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Me and my dad and my sister have all had like inside jokes about mum over the years.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And it's great. It's really great.
Right.
Um, yeah. So, I mean, kind of to wrap up, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned
Hmm.
in in your experiences of grief, of losing people, and of being around people who are dying, and around families who've lost someone?
I am grateful that it has normalized the process of death for me, that I'm not uncomfortable with it. Um, I can't say that I won't be afraid myself when I face it. Like, I always thought that because I've been around it, that I myself, if I faced it, I would be calm. But then there was a time really early in the pandemic when I was terrified of getting COVID, and I had a COVID scare, and I thought, oh my word, yeah, I'm not calm at all. I'm terrified. What if I have COVID? What if I die? And I'm so young, and I'm leaving my family. But I do think that it has normalized the process of death to the point that, at least with other people, I'm able to be around them. Some people are really afraid of hospitals. They're really uncomfortable seeing someone else in pain. It's certainly not comfortable for me. I I hurt to see other people hurting, but I'm able to kind of hold that, having been exposed to it, so that I am able to go into a hospital room or the assisted living facility And I can sit next to someone whose breath is slow and labored, and I can sit with them and be calm and just try to help their family be calm. And I feel like that's a real gift. Partly it's just kind of innate within me of my makeup as a person, but certainly the experiences have given me that gift. And I was I was there when my dad died, and it felt like a really holy moment, and it was an honor and privilege to be there. So I think that that is a gift that I've been able to give other people then who are going through it for the first time. It's scary to see your loved one, and so to be able to just say, yep, this is part of what the body does at this point. It's okay. Like, just keep, we can talk to them, they can hear you, they feel your love and presence. And just trying to be a calming presence, I think, is a gift that I've really developed over time, and having been through it a number of times.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. This has been really, really good. I've really enjoyed this
Yeah, me
conversation.
too.
It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
good to talk about these things,
yeah,
I
it is.
think. And it's good for ourselves. It's also good for other people to hear it, I think,
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Because
I
yeah,
really appreciate that you're kind of focusing on this topic, because everyone has, either they already have or they will, um, and just the various kinds of grief too, not just the death of a person, but there's a lot of different things that we grieve with transitions.
mm,
Even when they're good transitions, even when there's good changes, there's still a
yeah,
grieving process to go
yeah,
along with
absolutely.
getting my
Yeah,
dream job, but I'm leaving behind coworkers that I love, or I'm
yeah,
graduating from school and I'm excited about my future, but also my friends at school, I'm not going to see them every day, or whatever. There's just so many things that
yeah,
we don't think of grief as more than just the death of someone, but it's healthy for us to recognize. Sorry. My dog is going to start barking now because my daughter's coming home. So, yeah. Sorry. So
oh, so
keep barking till she comes in. I'm so sorry. Okay, now he'll calm down. She's in.
recording live, everyone. This is what it's like. Um,
Hey, we made
so
it through like almost 40 some minutes without him interrupting us. So that's pretty good.
yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So where can people find your work? And
Um, my handle is Go Show Love pretty much everywhere. That's what it's been on Twitter. Twitter's been the main place where I like to be, and so I've still hung on. I don't really know where else to go. I do have a Facebook page that's Go Show Love, and I started, I made a Blue Sky thing, Go Show Love, and my actual website is down right now, but I need to get it fixed up, because I actually have a lot of writing on grief on my website, which is AndreaDeWard.com. But I have to get it back up and running because I switched server providers, whatever you want to call that.
oh yeah, that's always yeah. And I've
It
been
didn't
there.
all migrate over. I have all the material still, but I
Yeah,
literally
yeah,
am just like, I haven't had the spoons to deal with this. This just, I've let it go. So yeah, I need to put that back together. But that's AndreaDeWard.com, and Go Show Love is kind of my thing everywhere. So
fantastic, great. Highly recommend it, everyone. And thanks for coming on the show,
yeah, thank you.
and thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.